PJ, you made a great point. The crowd was very subdued when the game began. It was the Cavaliers that generated excitement. This game was only a 5-point game from the second quarter to the end of the game. The game was won in the first quarter, and it was won by the efforts of the players, hitting tough shots like Steve Kerr said, and then following through.
Yeah, I don't think there's any question. I mean, Lou said the right things. I mean, blowing smoke at their fans. But, I mean, the atmosphere in this building tonight compared to the other night was night and day. The place was rocking before the team even came on the floor the other night. It was a morgue tonight. When the team came on the floor, yeah, they got jacked up a little bit. But the way the team played in the first quarter, they're the ones that energized the building, not the opposite.
Yeah, the building reflected the town today.
It did.
Exactly.
I mean, all of us were out and about. You walk around downtown Cleveland, and people were going, what do you think? You think we're going to win?
Are we going to win or are we going to win?
I mean, they were on the they were all, holding on to the ledge. And that's to be expected when you get, popped around like the Cavaliers had in those games and blown the lead in Game 3. I mean, everybody was unsettled, and so was this building. I thought J.R. Smith, really, with the way he came out and was aggressive shooting the ball, and Tristan Thompson, those two guys got to go on. LeBron was more demonstrative. You see late in the first quarter when he starts pounding his fist, that's not typical LeBron James. They knew they had to get this place fired up and in sync with them, and they did it.
And he only had 8. I mean, he had 8 points, but 6 assists in the first quarter. He's with the other guys in Tristan, 10 boards, but with those 10 boards, 5 assists. A couple times he got the rebound, boom, kicked it out to a 3. So he generated some of those 3-point attempts for the Cavs.
I want to clarify the picture we saw coming out, that Cavs in 7 sign in the window. That was not a J.R. Smith tweet.
That was just a sign. Someone took the sign down.
Sign in the window. So the 24 threes, I'm going to go out on a limb and ask you a question, PJ. The 24 threes are great, but also if you're pulling that ball out of the basket after threes, you can't run up and down if you're Golden State.
No, and again, they've lived by the 3 all year. They've made the most threes in the playoffs coming in. They were shooting the highest percentage. But look what happens. Ball goes through the basket, you got to take it out of bounds. They've been backpedaling this entire series.
That's the best one.
Night and day. But that's incredible. Good job. No problem. But the ball's bouncing along on the floor, and they get back and get set up. Fast break points, 9 tonight for Golden State. Look at the first 3 games, 27, 31, 24. That's because they're running off misses and they're running off turnovers.
And missing threes in transition, right?
Exactly. Nothing starts a fast break better than a missed 3. A corner 3 when your guy's flat on the baseline and boom, there they go. They controlled the game with their offense tonight. That helped their defense enormously.
You know the phrase that used to drive me crazy covering the league? Make or miss league.
Yeah.
It is. I mean, we can have all the analysis we want.
Right.
Those guys got hot. They're professional shooters. They can do that. We see this in the regular season, ebb and flow. Guys go through slumps, almost like hitters in baseball. And when they get hot like that, make or miss league, they made them, and Golden State tonight had no answer. We thought there was no way Cleveland could put up 120 points. They go to 137 because they made those threes. And we have no idea. Do threes travel, PJ?
Threes travel. The question is the supporting cast going to travel? I think the big 3 is going to play well again tonight. But are the other guys going to show up? It was a great team effort. All we did was talk about the first 3 games, all the different Warriors. Tonight we have a lot of Cavs to talk about. That's simplistic, but that's why they won. More Cavs played well tonight.
Along with that, when you say make or miss, it's the whole, like, if you live by the 3 or die by the 3. Well, everybody does something they do well, right? If you're a fast break team, you live by the fast break or you die by the fast break. They happen to, tonight, shoot a lot of threes. It worked out for them. Off they go. So LeBron was his usual self, which was superlative. Kevin Durant, again, 35 points. But at one point, look at this. They started chirping each other. They're not talking about winning gold medals right here. You know what I'm saying?
Why are you talking crazy, LeBron was saying? Why are you talking crazy?
Kevin's got a little bit more of an edge now than he used to have, and I think especially in this finals because he wants his first ring. And even if it means going through or getting in the face of LeBron, he'll do that.
He was the most animated Warrior by a lot.
Yeah, he really was
the most energized Warrior by a lot. And I don't think anybody else on that team necessarily looked locked in.
Well, let's face it, he wants it more than anybody else because he got one. He needs it. He got one. And if people say, I miss 80s basketball, this was 1980s basketball. You got a lot of points. You had chirping. You had physical play. You had guys clubbing each other. You had bully basketball.
And it was fun.
It was totally fun.
Guess who else was chirping and doesn't have his first ring? Zaza. Zaza was upset.
We got to talk about that.
How's your
Zaza
father
going to be suspended?
No.
I think not.
There was a punch to the
They may get a flagrant now. They may add a flagrant in.
But you don't think he'll be
all they got was a tech.
Here it is. Okay, so they're wrestling. 4 guys go around with him. And now he's wrestling, and he and Amon get in there. And it looked at first like he was just ripping his arm out.
Bam.
Here.
First one. That second one.
Yeah,
Which
exactly.
he thinks the counterpunch might have been a little.
Well, the second one did get in the knee, but this one right there, there was, and that's what LeBron's saying. He's saying, because LeBron saw it right there. He saw contact. And he kind of went to the ref and kind of gave the old hand
And LeBron
gesture.
has personal experience in that.
Yes, exactly, right. And that's, that with his recall, he thought that's a Draymond situation.
Well, Draymond told him he disrespected him. He stood over him. You can't do that to a man.
You guys are awfully certain that he's not going to be suspended for Game 5. I am not so certain.
No, I'm not. Yeah,
I think he just gets a flagrant, though, Mike. They
just think it'll be a flagrant, PJ. You don't think they'll say that was a punch?
But the other big story both coaches were asked in their news conference was that when Draymond Green got the technical, in our first half box score, it said Draymond Green technical. I assume the referee, they asked, who's the technical on? Draymond Green. Okay, we'll type that in our official stat sheet piece of paper.
Which they did.
And then suddenly Draymond gets teed up, and the referees had a moment to kind of look it over, and they probably realized, Draymond already had one.
Well, you see the clip? There's a clip that shows definitively the technical foul in the first half.
Right,
the
right there.
Foul right there is called on Draymond. But he walks right towards Steve Kerr and gives him the technical.
Right here.
Right there.
But Kerr,
right there.
But Kerr shouldn't get a technical for that.
But apparently he did. It was assessed to Kerr.
But it was
what they wrote down officially is another thing.
Yeah, at this point we think, and then Draymond thinks he has 2 technicals. He thought the first one was on him because how he reacts. He can't believe he got teed up there.
Did you see Klay Thompson's reaction?
He knows that's 2.
Klay thought
everyone knew it was 2.
Well, Steve said, "Are you out?" to Draymond.
Yep.
And Klay Thompson has his hands on his head to say, "Oh my God,
he's
Draymond's
gone
out of this thing."
Everyone in the league,
they thought it was 2.
Yeah, and it was on the stat sheet. The players knew that first one was on Green, but somehow it got changed, John. Within about 10 seconds.
The referee insists that when he went and did the bookkeeping, he was explaining that the
foul, the
personal foul was on Draymond, and that somehow the Kerr didn't get booked. Perhaps, like Brian Williams, we conflated the 2, and then we had a problem. And what happened? Our referee, our officiating expert, Steve Javie, here's what he saw.
Mm-hmm. Tonight's game, we had a little bit of confusion, and maybe I should say a little miscommunication between the referees and the scores table. In the first half, a foul was called on Draymond Green. A subsequent technical foul was called on that same play. The table thinking that it was on Draymond Green, but actually it was on Steve Kerr. Now we have another technical foul called in the second half, this one on Draymond Green. Everybody in the building and the scores table thought this was the second foul, technical foul on Draymond Green, which would make it an automatic ejection. The officials then got together and said, no, the first technical foul was on Steve Kerr. Definite confusion there, but I know when I watched the play in the first half, when the foul was called on Draymond Green, I saw the official calling the play, called a loose ball foul on Draymond Green, and then Steve Kerr jumping off the bench, running at the official. This is where I felt at the first half, the technical foul was on Steve Kerr. Therefore, the technical foul on Draymond Green in the second half was only his first one, and he was allowed to stay in the game.
Are we buying that?
Yeah,
I buy it.
Well, here, the problem is they said Draymond Green. I think they announced Draymond Green in the building,
right,
and that's the way it said. I called Joe Borgia at halftime, vice president officials, and I said, Joe, at halftime, are the officials supposed to look at the score and see who the flagrants were on, who the technicals? He said, no, it's the scores table. And it's important, I think, to note, scores table in the playoffs, it's not a Cleveland scores table. They bring in neutral people. They bring in people from the other teams in the league not involved. So it's not like home court put it on somebody.
PJ, you've been in this situation. Steve Kerr running, I mean, he didn't charge him. This wasn't like, Earl Weaver going at the home plate umpire. Was that enough to give Steve Kerr a tech?
Borderline, but I tell you, I thought John Goble, when you run at an official, they don't like that. I thought John Goble clearly, when he made the call, was looking right at Steve.
He was.
I mean, it wasn't like he had already bent down to pick the ball up, and he came up. If he was going to call it on Draymond, the damage was already done. He'd have called it right away. I thought, watching the replay, he intended to call it on Steve.
Although you heard Steve Kerr in his news conference, Steve Kerr thought it was on Draymond Green. He didn't think it was on him until the end, in which case he lobbied it.
He's also at halftime he's looking at his stat sheet, and they're saying, hey, he's got one. Believe me, they've had the conversation about Draymond before. He's got one already. So,
because if there was a question, they would, if they saw it on the stat, and these guys look at stat sheets, they would have gone to the scores table and say, wait a minute.
Are you sure?
Is that technical on Draymond or me?
If Steve thought it was on him, which he clearly didn't,
did not, right.
They would have come out and said, hey, they got this wrong. It wasn't the technical on me.
How about Mike Brown? Mike Brown
got
really
all up
lit
in his
into
kitchen.
Draymond, thinking that Draymond had got himself tossed from this game.
Yep.
Guess what? He should have been upset, and he could have gotten tossed from the game.
What about the Warriors now? How do we reconnoit? How do we go back home? We should go home, win Game 5. This Cleveland team had a miraculous performance. They shot 53% from 3, and we shot 28%. We've lost, one out of our last 30 games, a couple games out of our last 30. What do they do? What does the team do when they reconnoit and reassess, and what's the approach going into Game 5?
Well, the first thing Steve tells them is don't start thinking we got 3 chances. Like, don't start thinking we got to win 1 and